Chewy.
A little.
Back to Season 7 of The Clone Wars. Episode 5 is entitled Gone with a Trace, and it reintroduces Ahsoka to the storyline of Clone Wars, and it does so in a very interesting way. This isn't exactly how I expected to see her when she was brought back.
Yes, and I haven't seen any of the other Clone Wars seasons, so this is kind of like the first season to me, and the last. But this episode doesn't make me want to see Ahsoka in future episodes, because this episode I didn't like.
I agree in that it's unfortunate that she was brought back this way for you, especially because I think Ahsoka is a great character, and she's the breakout character in Clone Wars, and very, very worth viewing. So that's why I've been encouraging you to go back and watch the earlier seasons, because I think she is a very good character. This isn't exactly how I expected her to be reintroduced, and I think, they're doing that maybe on purpose. I don't know if the story was that effectual, though. Right from the start, she's on a swoop, and the swoop malfunctions, and it's almost slapstick comedy. How she deals with the swoop. She gets tipped upside down, she's grabbing the handlebars, she's running along the sidewalls, her feet are running over tops of other speeders. It really kind of went back to, pieces of the prequels that were my least favorite parts of the prequels. She's become such a good character and such a serious character and such an inspiring character that to kind of treat her this way, to me, was not exactly appropriate. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with that, but I think putting her in a slapstick situation just wasn't necessarily worthy. Then she kind of crashes onto the platform of a mechanic shop, and she meets Trace. And Trace is a mechanic, and she starts to explain the situation when you're in the bottom of Coruscant. Credits are everything, and you got to pay for everything. It's very different than topside. So we do get a nice look at the bottom dwellers in Coruscant and what life is like down there. And there's some interesting, I really liked it when they were at the restaurant at the one point, that diner kind of thing where they were eating outdoors. Thought that was really cool. So we get to see some interesting things. But basically, Ahsoka winds up kind of helping Trace and her sister Rafa, and who are kind of in debt to some underworld thugs down there, some petty criminals, and they take on a job assembling some droids, which turn out to be binary load lifters, and they're destructive kind of droids. So Ahsoka is helping, and interestingly, she's not using the Force at all through most of the episode until she's absolutely forced to use it. I think she's trying to hide the fact that she's a Jedi, or maybe she doesn't even want to use the Force because she's so disillusioned with the Jedi Order at this point, because and they alluded to this in the intro that she had left the Jedi Order because they had turned their backs on her when she was wrongly accused. They didn't defend her except for Anakin. Now, you didn't like it. That was obvious. I think you might have disliked it for other reasons than me, though.
Yes, I think that I didn't like Rafa.
And I don't think you're supposed to necessarily.
I liked Ahsoka, but I didn't like Ahsoka. I liked Ahsoka in some parts with Trace. But then I kind of gave up on her, I guess, through kind of halfway of the show.
The story wasn't that compelling.
Right.
I mean, were you interested in the story?
Not really. Like, what was the purpose of this story?
Right. I mean, the Clone Wars has a lot of stories where they're one-off type of stories, and it's interesting, and we're examining a culture or a character, and here we're looking, again, at the bottom dwellers in Coruscant and what it's like to live under the top side,
right,
and get a sense of that life. It's a street life kind of thing, and it's rough, and I think that's an important thing to look at. I don't necessarily think that the story that was told here, it wasn't new. I mean, it was derivative of things, and they've done that before, but usually they put their own spin on it to make it interesting and to make it feel like Star Wars. I didn't necessarily get that feeling here. This wasn't a story that was that there were no stakes here. I guess the purpose was to show where Ahsoka has fallen to, literally, in some ways, but also that she's still a good person. She still looks out for other people. She's still, she's still got her values intact. And she can still use the Force, and we see that. And she used it when she needed to save her friend, her new friend. I mean, there's some good points to the story, but overall, the story wasn't that interesting, and it doesn't necessarily move the plot forward that we can see at this point. Just a strange way to reintroduce a favorite character. I think a lot of people love Ahsoka and want to see her again, and this was a really weird way to do it. I think perhaps if they hadn't put all the silly slapstick comedy in at the beginning, maybe it would have been a little bit more a stronger story. I don't know.
Maybe it could have been more structured better.
Yeah, it was loosely structured. Again, it's a derivative story. A good person gets, somehow winds up being thrown in with people who aren't necessarily bad, but they've had to make tough choices in their lives because of their circumstances. And that person, that good person that we're following, sort of helps them out of it and befriends them. And we realize that the person we thought was bad really isn't so bad. And in Ahsoka, that character realizes that they aren't bad either, and that people come from different walks of life, and you have to be understanding and accepting of other people and try to help them where you can. I mean, good messages, all good messages. Just maybe not written as strongly as it could have been. I liked the character of Trace enough. I thought she was a decent character. Her sister, was written the way she was written, because I don't think you're supposed to like her.
Right.
And I don't think you feel any empathy for Rafa where you do. You have no sympathy for Rafa where you do for Trace. Because she's sort of at the mercy of her sister. And she has bigger dreams. She wants to fix that starship and get, out there in space and live a life there. But they have no money to do that. So, anything else?
No.
All right, last take for you.
I'm gonna say...
Let's go with the episode. Last take on the episode.
Okay. I'm gonna say kind of in the middle, but more towards skip it.
Yeah, I'm also gonna say in the middle. This wasn't my favorite episode. I'm still, a see it on the Clone Wars season, but this episode wasn't as strong as I feel like it should have been to reintroduce Ahsoka. All right, well, hopefully next week, obviously we're in Ahsoka's story arc now, so hopefully next week it picks up some speed and they move her in a forward direction.